trying to jumpstart this. Have this as a. My thought actually is that we could have this as a kind of an ongoing conversation about governance, because it's a pretty hefty and big topic and cover different angles depending on what's on our agenda. But starting off today with your recent book, and then I will probably ask you a set of questions in regards to that book, which I think is a very good book and it should be read. So I will be posting, when I'll be posting this edited version of the video, I will also edit the link to that specific book as well, so people are able to read it as well, not just hear about it as a hearsay. So, well, to do a simple presentation, well, my name is Frederick, and I'm working at Findwise and also as a researcher at the Applied Department of IT at Gothenburg University. I don't know if there is something that's opposite to applied IT, if there's disapplied or, I don't know, non-applied. The problem is that, well, all we know that the digital landscape that makes up our everyday work, things, tools and stuff we have to deal with, as in this case, trying to run a online seminar using some online webinar toolkit. Taxes quite a lot of effort from the end users to keep all the threads in place, and also the companies will have to take care of all the digital assets that are created by the end users, because in the end of the day, most of what's the value of most businesses are actually in the heads of the people and members of staff working there, how well they can coordinate their everyday pursuit, solving their issues and pains together with their clients and whatever they do, and that falls back to information and data that's captured, stored, retrieved, and used in all kinds of devices, anywhere, any place, and so forth. And the users, well, sometimes they behave when you have a coherent and nicely displayed workplace where everything is simple to use, everybody understands why I'm here, what I'm supposed to do, and so forth. But in many cases, there is actually some disconnect, and whereas end users fiddle around, tinker a little bit, and might even go for some excursions, if you will, signing up for other information services like Dropbox, Google, what have you, to do their everyday work because they don't think that the workplace actually should is a perfect match. And in that, I think we have to discuss the topic of governance, because this is the cornerstone that sometimes is missing, because most of the digital workplaces that I've been engaged in working with as an information architect have a very strong focus on the technology platform per se, the choice of toolkit, rather than what's supposed to be done with it, how are we going to organize the things we're going to do with this platform, and who's actually deciding where things should be and how we should behave in with a concerted and coordinated way. And that's why I'm very pleased to have Mark here with me, my old friend, finally online in the same meeting room as me. So bear with us, and I'll leave over to you, Mark, to do decent presentation of yourself, and then I will maybe go into some questions about your recent book and your thoughts around governance.
Thanks, Frederick. It's always entertaining when we have a conversation, and sometimes it's unplanned, like yesterday in terms of problems and so on, but it's good that we're speaking at last. Yeah, I'm thinking I've been involved with intranets probably figuring on for nearly 20 years now, either as a practitioner when I was the internet manager at BT, or in the last few years as a consultant helping other clients. And certainly while intranets have changed an awful lot and are now sort of transforming to what people call sort of a digital workplace. I found that if you want to have a good internet or digital workplace, at the foundation of that is a good, solid governance framework that helps to support the direction of a strategy that's in line with what your organisation needs. So while the governance and the strategy may vary from one organisation to another, because all organisations are different in the number of people, where they work, what they do, what their sort of plans are for expansion or so on, there are a number of common factors which, if applied, mean you're more likely to get a good governance framework that helps your organisation and its intranet rather than the opposite. And as I was saying a minute ago, the intranets have changed an awful lot. And certainly if I think about how organisations are bringing in new collaboration tools, there is a huge problem that grows because they don't know what the right level of governance is. Is it nothing, just like the old Wild West, no rules at all? Is it actually so restricted, just like any policy or news article, and therefore nobody can move without going through several hoops, and by that time they've forgotten what the idea was or the moment's passed? You know, what is the appropriate level? I think as you and I have found, certainly with you being an information architect, as organisations consider moving to this thing called the cloud, which basically means you've now got to manage content and tools in different places that are remote from where you used to have them. They may well be just in the room down the end of the corridor, no longer with that. How do you manage that? Governance is even more important to that, but not necessarily easier to apply. And also a lot of organisations have a number of different tools, different filing systems, different ways in which people can publish, and they want to consolidate them, whether it's with something like SharePoint or other sort of tools that provide a number of those things. And that also brings a number of pain points, I find, people understanding how do we bring this all together so it's manageable and it makes sense? How do we get the benefits? And I think that's the bit organisations find frustrated about. And sometimes I don't think it's always the technology to blame. It's not like, oh, you bought the bad instance of SharePoint on a Friday rather than the good instance of SharePoint on a Monday. It's how you implement it, and in that respect, it's making sure that you manage it properly. The migration, so you're getting the right content across, but you're also applying governance in the right way, so you get the full benefits from that. And a lot of organisations shake their heads and think, where do we go wrong? And when I talk with them, actually, it's not the publishing technology or whatever, the platform. It's how they've implemented it and how they manage it, not just from day one, but actually onwards for the next sort of months and years ahead.
So I mean, you touch a couple of key things, and all of them actually comes down to what one could call a kind of commonsensical communications, because you have to reach out to the leadership, because it's usually quite expensive platforms. It's not that they're just because they're on premise or on cloud. It still costs a lot of money and resources to actually move to wherever that is your new digital workplace will be. Similar to as you move from one house or building or construction to another facility. You have to have decent furniture so people can actually sit and work, have workplaces, have places where they can have coffee and coffee machines and so forth. I mean, it just doesn't ring as a completely different thing. So I mean, reaching out to the leadership to actually take responsibility and communicate in a very simple way why we do have to comply. I mean, and I think in your book you also state a couple of risks, and not only risk that people just don't understand why they should comply, but also the risk to the actual corporate setting. Whereas if they don't behave and they are in a organizational environment where there's highly regulated, as in energy or as in pharmaceuticals, and people are starting to email or use with a different means to share information, which they want to do because they have to do their everyday work. But they do it in such a way that it's actually in conflict with maybe intellectual property or regulatory affairs, or, well, lots of other constraints that most users don't even think about. Maybe just oh, well, I just attach this PowerPoint to my wife's email account because I want to read it afterwards when I come home from work, so I can finish it up and go back. And by that, you have kind of breaking all the rules and regulations for security means, and possibly the business case will be hacked and so forth. So there's quite a few, let's say, places where the end users would like to work in a good way, but they don't know why. And I think in your book you mentioned, so I think you had in the presentation you had earlier this month in May in Gothenburg, you stated kind of 7 items, if you will, that one should consider thinking about. So could you talk a little bit about those 7 pieces?
Yes, for anybody listening to this recording, it's 7 governance principles for good internet, and it's on SlideShare as well as on my site. And what it's really sort of picks up is that if you want to have governance that is going to help you, and it should, if it's not doing that, it's wrong, is making sure that you base it around the needs of your organization. So it's understanding what type of organization you're in. Is it a very small organization that's growing dynamically and exponentially month by month, or is it a very much a stable organization? What's the sort of culture in the organization? What's it made of? Are you able to freely share information with each other? Are you able to offer up opinions that may be considered to be wrong by other people, and you don't get a lot of flame mails about it where people say that's rubbish, you're stupid, it's bad, but it's actually, well, that's a good idea, but maybe you should think about this, and let's build on it, and who else can help us? It's just understanding the sort of culture. It's making sure that you understand as an internet manager what your role is, and that you're in the right part of the organization. So certainly I'd suggest, if you think of a spider's web, that spider is somewhere on the web where it knows as soon as an insect has made contact with it, it can feel that tension and that tug. You need to be wherever that sort of place is in your organization. So as soon as something's happening that's important, you get to hear about it, and you can respond quickly and understand how your internet or digital workplace needs to respond to meet that particular need. And it may be a very fast changing situation. Hello, the CEO is suddenly going to resign or whatever. How are we going to cope with it? What the situation is? Or there's a takeover, or you're sort of expanding other areas. It's just understanding your organization from the point of view, do you know the names of the key players in your organisation? Do you know what the names of the departments are? If someone says to you, "Oh, so and so, what's he in charge of?" and you're thinking, "Oh, I really don't know." Your credibility doesn't look too good there. So you've got to be up to speed on these things, and you need to understand what it is that as you said, is going to meet the rules. So in other words, making sure you meet any legal requirements and any regulatory requirements. And the one thing I find with governance is people think governance, oh, that's going to be hard, that's going to be difficult, that's going to be expensive. And it is if you do it all wrong. But actually, if you do it right, it saves you money. It makes things a lot quicker, a lot easier. It encourages people to contribute more to your internet, gets them better engaged. People are more satisfied. It's a big win-win if you can get it right. But it's how you do that and where you invest your time and effort that is so critical. And say from my experience of coming across so many different people who it's been lovely to help, but sad that they were in that bad situation to start with. Hopefully this sort of book is a sort of a guide that helps people. I always found it was a lonely job. There's normally only one internet manager in an organization.
It is, and I found it, very pragmatic, and I think that's why I enjoyed reading it.
Thank you.
So some books have way too many words and way too little actual um, pragmatic things to think about. I mean,
yeah.
If you have lived or survived the business climate of running a large internet, you run across all these things in your everyday life that maybe it's usually not exposed, if you will, with the political landscape and so forth. And that I think some of the things we were talking about the other day was, well, parts of the governance things are, well, simply put, communications, documents that states this is how we do things, whatever it is, running your internet portal or publishing or standards and so forth. And one of the things that we talked about in that case was that they should be so easy to comprehend, and it shouldn't be like a dull pile of documents that nobody reads, and it doesn't actually help them and guide them in the way of doing things. And it's like being in the pathway of the end user or the business leader, so that the end of the game actually is tangible every day. And also another question, as I just came up in my head while I was listening to you, is that while being alone or running a kind of big effort as a big internet, is that most of the time it should be highly networked. I mean, because you want to distribute the chain of command and power as close as you can get to the actual individual or the group or the whatever people responsible for their parts, because it's basically impossible for you to say, well, I run the digital workplace, so anything that goes wrong in your digital workplace is my responsibility. It could not be that. I mean, it's the same as saying, well, if the coffee machine breaks in Bangladesh, it's my problem because I'm facility manager. It's not. I mean, it's the guys closest to the coffee machine in Bangladesh who has the responsibility to fix it so their peers know what to do. But there's rules on how to apply new coffee to the coffee machine, same as into the digital tool sets. I don't know what you think about my strange analogy here.
No, that's right. That's right. And it's all about how it's managed, so that it's easy to follow with that coffee machine. The coffee comes on time and it's the right sort of coffee, and everything is serviced regularly, so those problems don't happen. That's all about, to me, governance. It's all about how things are managed, whether it's the processes. And if you think about organizations, then some sort of a governance hierarchy, in other words, clarifying the roles and responsibilities, also which of these responsibilities and roles are at a more strategic level from those which are done at an operational level. So whether it's a number of key senior managers that have some form of internet responsibility, or maybe are really affected by anything you do with the internet, these are sort of people that you should have, that you build a good relationship up and help you with improving your strategy through agreeing the governance framework at an overall sort of level, and leaving the sort of more detailed part of it and how it's implemented to you and any team that maybe report directly to you or are sort of like ambassadors for other parts of an organization, through to the publishing community. And it's making sure that it's in a language that people at each of these levels understands.
Yeah.
And it sets out very clearly what they should do. And it's amazing how often when I go to see clients and I say, okay, can I see what guidance you offer people? And there's sort of this puzzled look. Sorry, offer people. Well, you've got an intranet, yes. So what's on your intranet to help people to publish in it? Oh, no, we haven't got anything like that. So how do you expect people to follow the right publishing process to comply with your standards? and basically give people a good user experience so they're more productive, they're more effective, and your organization benefits. Yeah, I think we need some of that, Mark. Yeah. Can you help us? And that's how it starts lots of times. Yeah. So sometimes it's not just the language; it's the lack of language, and that's just a simple end goal to not have provided that. So it's easy to immediately get everybody on board. The one thing I was always proud of at BT, every publisher would go through an induction program. So it wasn't just what the tool was and how to use it. It was how the standards would be applied, the templates you used, how you published. We made it as simple and as easy to follow. But we knew once we'd done that and we trained people online, then we had a sort of a level of knowledge and understanding that we could be confident of. And in BT, we would ask publishers to go back and to do that training again, because people fall into bad habits, and we didn't want that to happen. So it was as much around what tool you're using as to how you use it, and these other things like standards, understanding the importance of them, not just a pain and I really don't want to do these sort of things, they're just useless. Actually understanding the benefit of it, because sometimes you find publishers just think they're publishing for their own benefit, not for the benefit of many people there. That's whether that's collaborative content or whether that's more accredited content like a policies or a news article. You should be thinking about, especially if it's collaborative, you've got a problem that you want other people to help you with, or you've got something that helps other people. You're not quite sure how, maybe, but it's within that sort of spirit of offering some thought that may be of help, that you would use a collaborative tool, and it's having that sort of governance around it to understand what its purpose is and how you use it for the best effect.
Right. And what I've seen is usually that, well, if you have standards implemented close to whereabouts people actually are doing their work, and you said as user training or the professional training for people who are working more professionally with accredited content, it should be there as a kind of layer, just say, well, this needs to be done, and we need to be working coherently, independently if we work in Bangladesh or in Bristol. I mean, we're working for the same company with the same aims of supporting the business, whatever the things we do. So one of the things I've recently seen is that very similar actually to the way you sign up for different online stuff, is that all these pretty good texts about how to behave is in the starting point when you create a new team site, for instance, in SharePoint. So stating you should do this and this and this and this, and you should comply with this and this and this, and it's there, good. But what happens is that the end users try to push the button in the end of the page, skipping all that reading, because I don't have time to read all that stuff. I just want to get my team site up and running. So get away with that, mumbo jumbo text, and just give me the thing. And that's why I think, as you said, I mean, when people start to do bad habits or tinker around and do their own ways that might not be coherent with the governance rule or the policies we have, is a very good feedback mechanism to how to adjust the governance package. Because if people feel that, well, all these controls, all these rules don't apply to me, I don't feel that they're actually helping me, then should be a feedback loop to the people actually governing the principles, so that it could be aligned with. So more of a kind of flexible. It doesn't mean that you have to change the rules all the time, because that on a top level it's kind of very simple things. Behave, do a decent shave every 1.5 hours. I mean, it's pretty simple things. But when people start to do bad habits, we should take care of it, not as a policing, but rather, why is this happening in the business? and how does our supporting platform. Then another thing I was thinking about was that working with content governance and internet governance and the things that you and I have been working with quite frequently, is that in tandem with that, you have shadow governance structures, as the IT governance with ITIL or COBIT or other, because it's a technical facilitation of something that we're using in a social construct. So that is some complexity that I've found in many organizations, because the participants from the leadership teams are participating in the IT governance committees and think that they're actually deciding on things that's relating to content, but they're only relating to actually the technology stack per se, not what's happening with the content. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, yes, I think you're right. I was thinking back to what you're saying about the governance example, where you give people pages and pages of guidance to them say, yes, I accept. As we all know, people don't read it and they just accept to get on and start using it. And to me, you might as well just not bother. You just need, if you can't fit it onto one page, one simple page that people can read through in very easy to understand language, simple things that are real do's and don'ts that encourage the right sort of behaviour, then you've wasted it, the opportunity. And what you need to do, instead of having all those pages and pages of guidance and everything, is you build the things that are mandatory, things that have to be done, into the publishing templates that people use. So if you want to have the owner of the page shown, then you make sure the field is mandatory. If you don't complete it, you can't publish your content. People very quickly understand that. Same with, you know, a review date, last updated date, levels of confidence, levels of security about it. All the features that are critical, you need to make sure you build them in. Even it's things like a taxonomy, where you want people to put metadata in. If you make the field mandatory, then people have to complete it. If you give them a list to choose from, that saves them having to think, and they can choose from that. They can also add a few extra terms. So there's a way of making governance much quicker, much easier, and much smarter. So you as the internet manager get that greater level of confidence that people are conforming, and people find it less of a hassle, because they start thinking, gosh, what did that say on page 5 of that guidance and that 5th bullet point? Was it this or was it that? Am I doing it this way? Am I doing it that way? And lots of time wasted. Yeah, I think that's sort of, to me, it's such an easy thing to do to make it smart.
Yeah, make it smart and we'll use the monitoring opportunities, because it's I mean, most of the traces and things people do, if they have bad habits, it's actually traceable. You can actually, in some sense, you know, find out that here is something, you know, lurking around, and by that being able to touch point with those people and just, you know, say, well, how can we help you, because we have found out that you actually do not tag your content appropriately or whatever, because when we do the monitoring or seeing how well the content is, you know, living, or the archiving, or all the different, you know, principles to those things. And lastly, I just want to finish off, because I have a forthcoming meeting, but I had one thought, and that was the things you see in your everyday life now, which is happening, and that is what's embraced as context-aware applications. You see it on your mobile phone. You have Siri, who almost knows what you're going to ask her for. You have Google now. Well, usually, because I'm Swedish, she always states some stupid things, but she's, you know, getting to the point where it's going to be interesting. And the reason I'm asking about this is because in the digital workplace, we actually do have a lot of context about the user, or the, you know, specific user scenario that I'm supposed to undertake, be it a process, be it a publishing routine. I'm doing something that has some structure to it, and by that, guiding the end user well, in a similar way as our consumer tools are trying to do now. What do you think about that? I mean, because that's a way of just bringing in the governance into the way of doing things.
Well, again, I think governance should be embedded into these apps as they should be into the publishing templates. In fact, it's probably some form of a template that is being used for this. I mean, the one thing about the apps, they're very easy to use. So in terms of a usability standard as part of governance framework, that's absolutely right. And you normally find the app, you can just do one thing with that. But it should also build in any sort of governance that is critical, so people use the app properly. But more importantly, they actually use it so they get the full range of features from it and the full benefit from it, because it's properly managed in terms of how it's laid out, what the functionality is. So I think you're right. It's a case of blending. Governance should not be something that's just it's up here alone. And it's very wonderful, all the words on it, but that's governance, and this is the real world and how we do things, and I use these apps. You need to blend them both together so you can get the benefit. That way you use the app for what you need to, you find it's really useful for that particular purpose, it's clear what the purpose of it is, and then you use something else afterwards, and all these things help you with your work. So it's all about making sure the governance helps that app to be used in a better way, maybe quicker, maybe more often, whatever it may be is its purpose. And also you can use it wherever you need to. So
in the office. As you said, I mean, the things I was thinking about, I mean, we have rules to drive cars, and that's a good thing. In the early, stages of cars, we didn't have applied some rules, whether we should go on the left or right hand side of the road, and that caused quite a few decision points where people actually were colliding because they didn't know whether the guy who on the other side is going to be on the left or right hand side, and so forth. So we applied a set of standards, signaling standards in a social environment where we use a tool, a vehicle, driving around. That's the way it should be in the internet as well. We have a set of toolkits, vehicles that we use to do our everyday work. We have signals telling us when to stop, when to take a left turn, who's going to be going where, and so forth. And we undertake also training actually to be able to drive in that environment. But after 20 years of driving or more, actually, I'm getting way too old, so I don't even mention how many years I've been driving. But still, I dare to say that I usually don't read the manual or the book that tells me all the traffic rules. It's kind of engraved into me that I assume that all the others driving next to me also have applied similar, cognition of those routes, and sometimes people have not, and then we have a conflict. My wife has a very different reading of some of the signs. So, but I don't know if she just skipped those chapters and took a shortcut. But so I mean, this is the way it should be in a digital workplace as well. What I would like to do, Mark...
say one point there. You see, coming from the UK, I would say that anyone who's driving in Europe is driving on the wrong side of the road. but the point to take in respect to internet and digital workplace is to understand where the level of governance, what is the appropriate level. It is not appropriate to specify exactly what everybody should do. You need to make sure you've got the key points established, so you've got the basic rights and wrongs. In other words, at a traffic light, when it's red, you stop, whether you're on one side of the road or the other. But you have to allow people some freedom to especially like with collaborative tools, so that if it's another country or a different part of the organisation, they behave differently, they have different needs. You need to make sure the governance is not too restricted so that it's it's a straitjacket, and it prevents the freedom and the collaboration that you may want to have, and understanding the local identities that people may have because of the language or culture in their part of the organisation.
Yeah, and culture is also engraved into different practices. So the people at the legal department speak legal business jargon, which I don't understand nothing about. And the people at the IT department speak IT-ish, if you will, and so forth, which means that in the bridging between those, communities and practices, there might be some communication, issues, because we don't understand. We were having different background, different training and university skills and so forth. But the overarching ideas of where the business is going means that we need to collaborate, even if we are different clans, and then go back to the clan or your specific profession or your specific country, the regional culture, heritage. So, well, here in our small setting, we are actually we like to sort by this. We like to sort by numbers because we are and that's really key for us. Whereas the overarching structure is sort by date or what I mean. So there's quite a few levels of thinking into this.
Definitely.
Mark, I'm very pleased that we managed to pull this through. I think all of them who have been listening have probably fallen asleep already. I would be happy if we could continue this conversation. Maybe in a month or so, post summer, I will post a blog post to give some reviews on your book and thoughts around governance. And I think we have just started to open up Pandora's box of all the different things that's actually related to governance. And governance is actually fun. So I think we should leave it with that. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Frederick. Bye.
Bye.